Hello, BookTube. Deb came over today to babysit the little schnauzer, and because I did not have any work or official obligations, that freed me up to have an informal, unofficial, personal day. And that felt wonderful. That really did. I don't need many of those, but the one today felt wonderful. I met with an old friend and we caught up. I walked all around, saw Boston on a very clammy but at least cool day. Met with some muscular teenagers, walked around, talked, and of course along the way I accumulated books, mainly because one of the old friends that I saw runs a church, and he's constantly taking in stuff, clothing, small pieces of furniture, books, that sort of thing, for the ongoing sort of charity sale that they have. And once again, he offered to just let me fill a bag with books, because he gets more than he can possibly get rid of. So I did. And I have, therefore, a bunch of books to show you that were he had already just finished with a big thing that he trucked out a bunch of stuff to some charity event of his own that he was doing. And this was the leftovers, and he said, you know, I need this space down here, so I'm going to throw these away and just let stuff accumulate for next time. So feel free. A lot of these things I already have, but to save them from just being thrown away, I grabbed them. The first of which is a classic, something I absolutely love. It's The House on Nauset, Marsh by Wyman Richardson, with illustrations by Henry Bugby Keane. That I have praised this book on this channel before. There is a hawk over a sandbar. I praised this book on this channel before. This is not the original cover. This is just an autofocus picture of a Cape Cod marsh. But this is amazing. It's an amazingly touching and wonderful, immortal book. Probably the best book that I've ever read about Cape Cod. And then the next one is something we've seen on this channel before, but I found it in a Pimlico UK trade paperback and had to have it. It's going to be thrown away. And I go to this thing all the time. I go to it very often. So I could probably stand to have a beater copy, something that I'll just reinforce and use whenever I need it. And this is Victoria Glendinnings's biography of Anthony Trollope, which is just a wonderful reading experience. It's very useful, yes, but it's also a wonderful reading experience as a biography. One of the examples that I use of biography as a pleasant read, not just a storehouse of information. Next one's also a biography. I noticed the other day that I didn't have it, even in a Penguin Classic, so I grabbed it. It's Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves, his great memoir about his time as a soldier during World War I. I just recently got the finished copy of a new biography of Graves that covers around the same time period. And when I got that and realized I was going to be reading it and writing about it, I thought, okay, well, the first thing you need to do is reread Goodbye to All That. Not exactly a hardship. It's a great book. And I looked around and I didn't have it. I didn't have a copy. So the next time I went to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, I thought in the back of my mind, look for it. And out on the sale carts was, by random freakish chance, every biography of Robert Graves that's ever been written, but not his own book. So I thought, all right, well, you can borrow it from the library or whatever. And then I saw it today. I grabbed it for free. So I need to refresh my memory on it, because reading a new biography of the same time period, you're going to want to know what Graves said. Anyway, especially since the author will spend a great deal of her time either correcting him or corroborating him. Then the next two I got were Penguin Classics for the Penguin Wall. First one was The New Machiavelli by H.G. Wells. This is an Edwardian era, 1911 or 1912, something like that. It's an Edwardian era novel of H.G. Wells. It's a novel about politics and women's rights and social issues and Fabianism that falls into the large category of novels of H.G. Wells that are not science fiction. His science fiction novels get lavishly reprinted all the time in beautiful editions, and they're constantly reprinted in singular editions for schools. But people forget that this guy wrote prolifically for his whole life. And he has a whole shelf full of just ordinary contemporary social novels that don't have any Morlocks in them, that don't have any invisible men in them, or anything like that. And I think they're fascinating. They don't grab the reader the way his speculative novels do. They just don't. I don't think anybody would make an argument otherwise. And that's not just a question of selling down to the least common denominator. That's just a question of authorly enthusiasm and also authorly distance. Wells would get caught up in an idea for a book, and sometimes he wouldn't stop to think, okay, well, apart from the idea, what's the right way to tell the story? And he very often fails to do that with his contemporary social novels. He never fails to do it with his science fiction. And I think that's why the science fiction catches on. It's not just because it's lurid, it's also because they're better executed. But even so, I'm a big fan. So I was happy to have it. I have no other Penguin classic H.G. Wells that is not science fiction. None. I don't have Tono Bungay. I don't have anything other than this. So it was great to find it. And this next one is a little beaten up, but I'll fix it with love and care. This is Dashing Diamond Dick and Other Classic Dime Novels. This is a collection of 6 dime novels from, you know, they flourished after the American Civil War and sort of died off in the 20s. But it used to be a publishing phenomenon. The printing presses were suddenly able to make these really cheap little pamphlet-y things and just keep churning them out. And the railway lines in the country were advanced now so that they could get anywhere. You could ship them anywhere. And also, in the progressive era, there were all sorts of... There was a boom in literate readership. The literate section of the country skyrocketed at the end of the 19th century, thanks to public education, thanks to all sorts of... If you make a... Baby, you're making a little bit of noise here. I don't mind some background noise, but they can't hear you at all. You just settle down until I'm done. Anyway, if you pass legislation that says that everyone in America has to have an 8th grade education, they have to be in school for 8 grades, then you are, down the line, shortly thereafter, going to create a big reading public. And that's why the boom at the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century in magazines, in newspapers, and also in dime novels, it just took off because they suddenly had a readership. And I haven't read a dime novel from start to finish, and I don't know how long, so I was very happy to find this. Then a classic. This is from the 1930s. This is Personal Pleasures by the great Rose Macaulay, who's now totally forgotten, except maybe for the Towers of Trebizond and maybe this book, which is just a bunch of very short, semi-humorous observations about ordinary things. Potted plants, skiing, swimming, either in public pools or in various, public beaches, wearing a hat, staying indoors in inclement weather. Just wonderful little thing. This is a delightful book of just inconsequential reflections, and in a nice edition. I don't think I've ever seen this Echo edition before, so I was again glad to grab it. Let's see, we've got then a Penguin trade paperback of the illustrated Samuel Pepys. This is the Diary of Samuel Pepys. This is, Robert Latham did an abridgment like this, but he did the shorter Pepys, a great abridged volume of Pepys called the Shorter Pepys. But then he did this thing for these penguins with the yellow spine topper and the sigil on the bottom there. He did this thing which is just lavishly full of pictures to illustrate all the stuff that Pepys is talking about. There are no pictures in the Shorter Pepys. So a great Penguin edition of Samuel Pepys, gladly, if it's going to get thrown away. Same thing with this thing. This is a trade paperback of the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, who's on my mind because he's looming on the horizon. Tolkien is about to descend on book 2. A month-long celebration of Tolkien. And I love the Silmarillion, but I only have it in a mass-market paperback. And that mass-market paperback is 1 billion years old. It was bought as soon as it appeared in mass-market paperback. And for some reason, I have not liked any of the editions of the Silmarillion since. There's a big hardcover that's too big to comfortably read, and then there's this thing. This is Tolkien's Old Testament. This is Tolkien's mythology. The mythology undergirding the world we meet in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And the Silmarillion is a story full of men fighting dragons, and elves fighting Balrogs, and elves and men and dwarves contesting against gods themselves. And what's on the cover? Well, if you can kind of make it out in this gloomy reproduction, it's a cover of a bunch of elves waking up by the sea at twilight. Oh my. Hello, Glorfindel. That's what the Tolkien estate chose to make the cover of this book. An absolute snoozer. And that, I think, is the reason why I didn't want ever to get this when I would see it at bookstores, even when I worked at bookstores. And then today I saw it, and it was free, so I was going to grab it anyway. And then I thought, you know, you could just make a new cover for it. Nothing that says you can't do that. It's a work of an hour. It'd be fun. And then you'll have a trade paperback size of the Silmarillion that'll hold together when your mass market paperback finally dies. Until finally there is... I mean, I predict that sooner or later someone will make a gorgeous edition of the Silmarillion. I wish that I could dictate such a thing. I know exactly what I'd want it to look like. It would be big and fat, first of all. It would be heavy-duty paper. It would have deckled edges. It would have a built-in bookmark. It would have the French flaps and original artwork on the cover. It would be gorgeous. It would be a gorgeous thing. And that hasn't happened. So I might as well improvise. So I got this thing to add to Tolkien. And then Norton Critical Edition. This is Kafkas Metamorphoses in the Stanley Korngold translation. This has been everywhere. It's the Korngold translation. It used to be the gold standard. So I was happy to get it. I don't think I have a copy of it. And this is, for those of you who don't know, this is Norton Critical Editions. You get the text at the beginning, and then you get all sorts of critical supporting material, not just sources and letters by the author, but also critical essays spanning, you know, in this case, a century. So this is just Kafka's Metamorphoses, but then it's a whole bunch of other stuff as well. That's I probably won't reread the Korngold translation right away, but the thing that I will read right away from this volume is all of the supporting material like that. So, and then this is a double, but I had Must Go Teenagers to carry it, and I love it. And the copy that I'm using now could easily fall apart on me. I use it so much. This is the Running Press Complete Shakespeare. The plays, the sonnets, and the poems, all of it. This is the whole of Shakespeare. And it's never been touched. It's in perfect condition. So, and my portage was free, so I grabbed it. Same thing with this one. I have a copy of this somewhere. Talk about waiting for a Penguin classic. This is Alfred Kazan's classic long essay, A Walker in the City, about just New York and Brooklyn when he was a boy. So totally vanished time. I would put this on the same shelf as Samuel Eliot Morrison's great book, One Boy's Boston, which is also gone, and never reprinted like this. It'd be nice to have, like, I could easily picture some editor coming to Penguin Classic and saying, you know, there are slim Lost World memoirs capturing various eras of the late 19th and early 20th century that are classics in their own right. Why don't we make a small library of them? We can make new editions, new cover, new introductory essays, and we can also offer it as a box set. A Walker in the City would be one of them. One Boy's Boston would be another. Memoirs of a Catholic Girlhood by Mary McCarthy might be another. And you could easily do 5 slim volumes of this sort of thing. And I love this book. So and this is very pretty. So I grabbed it. I'm not 100% sure that I even have a copy. Now I do. And then this next one is a big, pretty thing that I couldn't pass up. I just couldn't pass up. This is the Atlas of Middle-earth, full of extremely detailed maps. The maps not only give you dates, but they also give you movement. Like in military move, this is the Siege of Helm's Deep, where you get not only a map of what an area looks like, there's the plan of Orthanc, but you also get maps showing how it was taken or the movement of troops. Just incredible, the amount of wonky detail in here. And I've seen this a million times in bookstores, but I've never thought to get it. But if it's going to be thrown away, I'm going to grab it. Same thing with this next one. Might seem like an odd choice, although maybe not. This is A Dance with Dragons by George R.R. Martin in the beautiful hardcover. This is the last Song of Fire and Ice novel that George R.R. Martin will ever write, that he will ever complete. And I, in addition to not wanting to get thrown away, and in addition to not having a copy, I really like this novel. Just in terms of as a novel on its own, rather than just as an item in an unfinished fantasy series, as a novel on its own, I really like this. I remember more scenes from this one than I do from virtually any other novel in the series. So I was happy to get it. It now makes rather conspicuous the absence of other books. I need to see to that. I have the first 3 in trade paperback, and then I have this one. So there's one I'm missing that I need to grab. Probably it will turn up at the Brattle. And then this last one, incontestably the find of the day. Just an amazing thing. I actually said to my friend, you know, the rest of the stuff I'm happy to have my boys cart away. This thing I feel like I should pay you for. And he pointed out I do favors for his church quite often, and I don't do them so that he can remember and recompense. That's not the whole point. That's the exact opposite of why you do a favor for a church. And I occasionally have to remind him of that. I have to say, well, you know, you've got this at-risk group of kids. I come and talk to them. I also give them my email. I'm free for them to contact at any time. I step in for your guy when he's got what we'll diplomatically call a touch of the collywobbles and cannot do his Sunday morning sermons. I will step in and help. I help out whenever I can. Also with written material. So I don't require a recompense, but he nevertheless, when I said, I feel like I should pay you for this one, he said, no, you do plenty, and then he started listing. I cut him off and said, all right, fine. He reminded me again also that he was just going to throw it away. And it's this, look at this. It's the Riverside Shakespeare. Without a single mark inside it. This is the first edition Riverside Shakespeare, the big brown book, that is the best one-volume scholarly edition of the complete works of Shakespeare that has ever been done. And I mean, this thing is for reading. This has very little in the way of scholarly apparatus. It's mainly just for reading. But this thing is for studying. This thing is if you, in addition to reading, you want to know textual variations and the differences between the quartos and the folio and whatnot and everything. Just beautifully done. And also extremely elegant essays. Elegantly written essays. For everything to do with Shakespeare. His time, his theater, each individual play, each individual poem. Ugh. I had this Riverside Shakespeare for 2 decades. I used it in all kinds of classes. I used it in all kinds of academic settings. And mine pretty much fell apart from solid use. And then, by random chance, at a charity shop of some kind, years and years ago, I found another copy of the Riverside Shakespeare that likewise was not touched. The problem is not that you don't see this. The problem is that you see it and you open it up and it's covered in neon highlighting. And I found a clean copy a while ago and thought, great, you don't want, your personal library should not be missing the Riverside Shakespeare. In this edition, the big brown Riverside Shakespeare. But then, right after I got that, I gave it away. Somebody asked me, you know, do you have a Riverside Shakespeare? I really, really want a copy. So I sent it to them. And have gone without all this time, even though I'm in the middle of ShakeTube, 2018, here on BookTube. So there you go. Now I have the Riverside Shakespeare. And I'm just going to tell the next person who says, do you have the Riverside Shakespeare? I really, really want it. I'm going to tell them, next time I see a copy, I'll grab it for you. That's good. This is going to go in this room. Nothing in this room goes to anybody. But anyway, that's it. It's too big to make a pile. Or is it? Let's give it a try. This was a very productive day for books for someone who says he's not taking in any books. This is the Riverside Shakespeare, the Atlas of Middle-earth, A Dance with Dragons, the Running Press Shakespeare, the Corngold Kafkas Metamorphoses in a Norton Critical Edition, a trade paperback of the Silmarillion, which I will Frankenstein into something that I really like, then some Penguins, the Penguin Samuel Pepys, the Penguin Dime novels, the Penguin New Machiavelli, then Personal Pleasures by Rose Macaulay, the great Rose Macaulay, Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves, the Victoria Glendinnings's great biography of Anthony Trollope, and The House at Nauset, Marsh by Lyman Richardson. A glimpse of a Cape Cod that partially no longer exists and partially will always exist. Just wonderful. Eventually, in the course of the day, my boys dropped off one after another. So I eventually had to cross the finish line carrying all this crap by myself. But that's all right. I look very old, but I am still a little sturdy. So I was able to do that. And now I get to just sink into all of these things, which is great bookish fun. it was just a great bookish day. And that's just wonderful. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.